sun-dried dust breaths in the air. 2 dark days, do you have a tear to spare? Make a promise, the world awaits. It's heavy just breathing through this debate. Come on, start a riot. When they love you too much, know it's fake, fake, or even hate. Don't be scared if the weight paralyzes you, stayed at the gate. No, it's a lot to take in, it's designed to know when, don't wait. Don't be scared when the weight paralyzes you, stay.
All right, what's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of Adventure Talk Live, the kind of live video version of the Adventure One podcast. So thank you for tuning in. Again, if you're listening to this later just as a podcast, swing by and check out the video version. Sometimes you get to see our goofy antics if you're watching this live on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Today, I am sitting here and I am joined by my buddy Nate. What's up, man?
Hey, buddy.
You're wearing your bino harness.
Yeah, part of my story that I want to tell this evening.
Okay. So we're a couple weeks into deer season now, and this is your first time. Normally your season hasn't even started yet. So this is your first time that you've actually been an active participant in archery season. And so you said you had a story from this weekend that was an interesting one. And so you've been holding out on me. So I'm kind of ready to hear it.
Definitely. So I had my second sit of the season this past Saturday, and you're exactly right. I'm brand new to archery hunting. My range is not that far, and I went into the sit. It was a morning sit, and I was only going to do it for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours midday and call it quits unless I got a deer. And the property that I'm on is about a 30-acre spot that I'm allowed to hunt, friend of a friend. And it's my first time hunting it. Really, I just got permission over the summer, so I really haven't done a whole lot of scouting, but I did enough to set up cameras, enough to set up some tree stands that are there in place. I don't have to like climb or anything. I don't have to really set up anything morning of. It's kind of a plug and play deal. And so I went out this past Saturday because last Friday dropped 20 degrees, and so I was like, there's definitely going to be some deer action, and there was on my cameras Friday. It was sustained Saturday, and it was going to jump back up. I think it was Sunday night or Monday, and so I thought I had a window. Went out there Saturday and got there plenty early, but I did jump a deer on my way to my stand. Wasn't too worried about it because I wasn't too worried about it though, because I don't have a feeder. I don't have, like, it was an hour before sunset, and my tree stand is in a trail area. So I know there's more than one deer. I wasn't too bummed about it, but I did hear one kind of, I don't know, probably 40, 50 yards away from me when I was about 200 yards away from my stand. And so I get there, and
at least you didn't blow one out like right under your stand or something.
Yeah, exactly. And that was where I wasn't bummed about that either. But I did get there, and I'm all set up, and I get seated in my stand, and I start taking my little hunter's nap. And, just barely close my eyes, but this is a new type of hunting for me.
Yeah.
I actually typically hunt with ear pro in just because I have bad hearing. And so I love archery hunting and just like being able to hear everything.
When you say with ear pro, you mean the like walkers that like amplify around you?
Last year I did, but those ended up not being great because they picked up so much wind, and like an armadillo or a squirrel crunching leaves was like deafening. And so I ended up just, I would have one earbud in, like my left ear, and my right ear, I would just have it out, and I would just put it in if I ever saw anything.
Sorry, you were just talking about protection for rifle season. I was thinking you were talking about something to help you hear better. Because you said your
no,
hearing wasn't that. Got it. Okay, we're good.
no,
We're
yeah,
good. Just had to clarify.
it's a it's a new experience, more intimate for me in archery season. I'm taking my hunter's nap and I hear some crunching behind me. I look behind me and I saw the butt of a deer, and I was like, all right, well,
Uh-oh.
cool, we're getting some action.
Yeah.
It was a bigger body deer, but it wasn't in range, so I mean, I wasn't really like bummed that I missed anything,
So big
but
butt.
that
So
woke me
what?
up for sure. Yeah, right. It woke me up for sure, and I was good to go for many hours after that, but I wasn't getting too much action. There's a mom and two babies that I saw go by about 60 yards at maybe 8 o'clock, which is my prime time. So sunrise is right around 6:45, and I don't expect anything for about an hour because I'm on trails,
Yeah.
and I get the going to bed action. And so they showed up pretty much on time. They were about, like I said, 50, I think I said 50, 60 yards away on a ridge, or close to a ridge. I hunt a hillside, and they went by, and it was cute to see the mom kind of chasing after her kids, being a new parent myself.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like my window of time was not really full of action. I saw the one deer butt and I saw the two, or the other like group of three. And so being that it was a cold snap, and I live in Tennessee, and there was some mutterings about some pre-rut or just some young bucks kind of getting um some sparring going on, just trying to figure out what's the pecking order.
Yeah.
So maybe not pre-rut, but pre-rut, if you will.
Yeah.
And
Just
so
them kind of figuring out, because I think, all the bucks are still together, but I think, you've got your year and a half year olds are like, let's use these horns on our head. Let's figure out who's stronger. Just curiously. Yeah.
exactly. So around 9 o'clock, like, you know what? I want to like break out this rattling bag. I've never gotten a buck before, so I have a rattle bag, and I got it out, and I didn't do anything super aggressive, but I did it for about 20 seconds on and off, right?
Yeah.
And yes, it was awesome. I kid you not. I put the bag on top of my backpack, which was kind of nestled in between two trees. Like it was in its spot, and I turn around and I'm watching this little forky, like year and a half year old buck come down a trail. And I was like, holy crap, like this is
right
pretty
to
cool.
it.
Like right to it. And it had his head up and it was looking around. And I was just, it was awesome. Like I had the attitude going into the hunt that the mom and the babies are off limits for me, but pretty much anything that provides me a shot within 20 yards that's like a clean shot, I'm going to take. When I saw the year and a half year old like Forky, I wasn't too excited about it, because I'd like for him to grow up. He looked really healthy. His rack looked nice, and so
Yeah.
I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to shoot him. I was just kind of like, that's pretty cool. When I just rattled this sucker in like instantly. And so his head was up, but he wasn't heading like I sit in an area where there's just a ton of trails. He wasn't heading on the trail right below my tree stand. He kind of took a turn going uphill and I ranged him at 27 yards. And I was like, I'm not comfortable with that shot. Plus, he's a pretty small deer. But don't get me wrong. If he was less than 20, it would have been meat in the freezer, and I would have been okay with that,
Yeah.
because I
just
don't
top
want
pin,
to pass.
Send it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to pass on something right now that I would be happy to get my last day of the season.
Well, that's
Right.
what they say on all the TV shows, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I watched plenty of them. And so he passes at 27 yards, and he's not running. He's definitely purposeful walking, though.
Okay.
And he turns up away from me at about 11 o'clock, and he's at about 40. And I'm like, you know what? I have my grunt. Let me see if I can play with this little guy, for a little bit. And I break out my grunt, and I start, and he lifts up his head, and he's heading uphill, and he takes a 180, and he starts heading downhill. And then he starts going left and right, and I keep on grunting at him.
He's looking for a deer.
Oh, for sure. And it was I love turkey hunting. I've never been duck hunting, but I imagine I would love it just because of the interaction you get with deer. And all of my deer hunting, which I haven't done a whole lot, it's just been like the sit and get. You sit down and you get what happens to you. And
Yep.
it
It's
was
like
so cool to
catfishing.
interact. Exactly. Just put your pole in the water and like crack up whatever you're drinking, right?
Yeah.
And so I I was like interacting with him, and it was just so much fun to see him kind of go back and forth. But he never gave me a shot. He never came within 30 yards after that. But he kept on going back and forth.
But it's so much
And
fun to see
eventually,
them react like that, though. I mean, I don't have a
yes,
ton of experience with elk hunting, but the last 2 years I've gone, and I think that's what's so cool about it is it's that proactive element that you're like, you're playing along, I guess, and you're communicating. And turkey hunting, same deal. It's a little bit more active, and so I think that's even if it's a little buck, just to see it and learn about it through experience, super cool.
for sure. And so I did have my bow in my hand with a broadhead arrow knocked. Like I was ready to go because I saw him coming down the trail, and that's when I like very slowly grabbed my bow. And so I was holding on to it. It was about 40 degrees, so my hand was kind of getting cold.
Yeah,
And he eventually gave up on the grunt and he just started heading uphill. And the crest of the hill is about 100 yards away. And I kid you not, another deer at same size met him at the top of top of that hill and started sparring. And I
that's
was like,
cool.
"Holy smokes! I just like created like a National Geographic moment right here. Like I want to check this out
It's like
because
they
I
both heard someone else fighting and they both came in because they were in the mood to try it. And then they just
exactly."
fought each other.
And so I don't know how old that deer was, but it looked a similar size, and they were behind a bunch of woods, but I could see them kind of turning back and forth. I saw heads down. They were sparring, right? But I wanted to get a closer look. So I had my chest harness, bino harness on, and it's super convenient, but I'm not very good at like one hand binoing, right? And
Right.
so I turn to put my bow back on the hook, and I kid you not, less than 15 yards away, there's this big deer off to my left in the trail, and it blew me. All I saw was white butt just tailing off into the woods. No pun intended. And I
Oh
realized at that
man.
moment that I was super stealthy and I was very focused on the deer I had in front of me. But something that I've learned with archery hunting is being so intimate that it's not about being stealthy towards your target. It's about being stealthy,
In general.
period. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was in general,
Because I
exactly.
bet
And so
you
I was
if that was an older, bigger buck, I bet he came from downwind too.
oh gosh, yes, that's another part of it. So I was really proud of myself because we've had a ton of conversations and I watched plenty of YouTube and TV that when you rattle, the bucks they come up from downwind.
The
And
big
so I
ones,
kid you not,
yeah.
the reason I saw the buck so early is because I rattled, I put the bag down, and I looked downwind and I was like, that's the trail they're going to be coming down. And that's immediately when that small buck came.
Yep.
And so then I just got too excited and I was focused on that. And then when I put my bow down, just this like, I was like, this is cool, like whatever, like I'm enjoying my time, is when on the other side of a tree that was kind of blocks me, there was a big deer. And I mean, it was a bigger body. I never saw like a big rack or anything. It could have been an older doe. But my
It wasn't.
uh, gut, yeah, my
Not if
gut
you had
tells
just
me that
rattled
it
and
was a
two
big
little
buck.
bucks came in. It was the big buck that was bachelored with him.
Yeah. So the
Oh,
that
bummer.
I know.
Dang it.
I know. So I wouldn't have had a shot at him where he most likely was standing. He would have had to come in some more. It's not like he was like in shooting range looking at me or anything like that. But he was definitely close,
He was
and
coming in.
he
Yeah.
he was coming in, and I just moved too quick when I put my bow back on its hook. So
Dang it.
that's my short story, and it was tough. And I stuck around for a good while, and I rattled again, and I grunted a little bit more, but I didn't get any more action.
Yeah.
That sucker blew the area.
Dang it. Well, what a cool experience, though. I feel like every year I rattle in a buck, and I try it about twice a year. maybe, maybe I try it on. I think probably 4 to 5 days a year I rattle. Now it's not like I'm hunting every day or anything, but I think right now is the perfect time. And usually it's been I've never rattled in a big buck. It's always been a little one. And, you know, I got a video clip last year I rattled and just buck comes running in just stupid, just running right towards me. And I was rifle hunting and I'm like, oh, he almost would have made that too easy. He ran up to 40 yards and I was just sitting on the ground, like in a field, like with my back up against, like one of those, I call it Mexican holly, but I think it's a type of holly, but those real prickly bushes. I was just like sitting in one of those and he just ran like right up to me. But I've never rattled in a big one. And so that's pretty cool that not only your first time rattling, I think there was something significant in there.
For sure. And so I will say I did, when I got down, I wasn't very ginger on my walk back to the car. Not because I was mad or anything, but it's just I had a purpose. Like, hey, I'm done. I kind of checked out of the hunt. I'm heading back to the car. I kid you not, less than 100 yards from my car, there was 3 deer that I busted. And I was just like, are you
think
kidding
they were bedded
me?
down in the edge or something?
They were bedded down in the edge, and it was a super sunny day, and I can guarantee you that they were just like in some like patch of greenery, like getting some sun, and they heard me coming because there's a ton of leaves on the ground right now. And so I would have totally taken the shot. It wasn't too close to the house or anything like that. Like I would have taken a shot, but I was just checked out at that point.
Yeah.
And so it was a good hunt. I'm not mad about it at all. It's just I know that it's like a constant learning process, and I need to have that stuff in my mind when I hunt, just to kind of learn from the past hunt and move on.
Yeah.
And not be bummed about it, not dwell on it. One thing I did notice when I got down from my tree stand, and the dilemma that I have right now is my next hunt. I'm not going to be able to hunt for another couple weeks just with some stuff going on around here. And it's going to be muzzleloader season. And you can see really far away with all of the leaves being gone on the forest floor, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's a pro and con. That means that they can see me or smell me or whatnot. But I have a much bigger range now with a muzzleloader. I'm comfortable up to 100, 150 with that. And so I don't know. It might be a game time decision. I kind of have a brush pile. I'm not going to put a pop up, but we'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Nice. Well, and I guess there you probably have to, I don't know if it's like Texas where if it's on private, you don't have to wear orange. But do you have to wear orange even though it's a gun season?
I do not on private land. On public land, you do,
okay,
regardless
so same,
of whatever
same as
season.
here. Yeah, if you're on public, even if you're bow hunting, if there's an open gun season, you have to wear orange. But if you're on private, it's whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so that, I guess you have a decision to make between now and then. It comes down to, well, you practice with your bow and set up your arrows and you did all this stuff. How important is it to shoot one with a bow? Or do you just want to get one?
And that's the tough part, because I think that I probably could get one with a muzzleloader in the tree stand regardless.
Yeah. How long's your muzzleloader season?
2 weeks.
Oh, so pretty short. And then what, does it go back to archery or is it rifle?
Goes straight into rifle. So it goes it goes like the expected range. It like goes as a range would be expected to expand. So it goes archery, muzzleloader, rifle.
See, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Tennessee does some things that are wrong in my opinion, but I think that is very right, and I wish more states did it that way, because it truly is in order of, you know, when you need the most advantage to when you have the most range.
For sure.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think some people would argue this with me, but I think crossbows and muzzleloaders should be in that same middle season together.
It's because you're a purist. I am getting
it's just I'm not a purist. I don't shoot a trad bow or anything like that. I'm just thinking about hunting methods and hunting ranges. I think how you hunt with a crossbow is actually a little bit more similar to how you hunt with a muzzleloader, where you aim it, you don't have to draw, but you still have a limited range compared to a rifle. It's more like that than it is to a vertical bow. Again, not in terms of what the projectile is, but just purely in terms of hunting method.
I agree with that. Yeah, and it takes a long time to reload, yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
So you still got to make your shot count for sure.
yeah, that's fair.
Well, I remember,
I
and
am
that was the
getting
joke in Michigan. It was all those small places, and it was a shotgun season, so people were just boom, 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 boom. And if you ever only heard one shot, you'd be like, he must have had a muzzleloader. Like, that's the only reason you would
so
shoot once.
that's actually the deal, and I'm actually kind of in a spot like that where if the deer runs and stops, it's probably getting another one because I don't have a much space
Yeah,
to track, especially because at the top of the ridge is the end of my uh, the top of the ridge is the end of the property.
yeah.
And so, and then like off to my right, like I guess you could say one side is probably 85 yards away. And then to the left, it's hundreds of yards, and to downhill, it's hundreds of yards. But I got away from everything on purpose so I'd have a better chance of seeing deer. And through two sits, I've had a lot of action and I can't complain. I just got to put it all together here soon.
Yeah.
But one thing that's different for me is I'm not hunting with a rifle this year. So my landowner doesn't want me hunting with a rifle. I think he's uncomfortable with it at this point.
Okay.
And so I have my year would be archery, muzzle loader, which is a rifle, but
A muzzle loading rifle. Yeah. No center fire.
fair
rifle.
enough.
I got you.
Exactly, yeah. And so archery, muzzle loader, and then shotgun. And I do have a 20 gauge shotgun that I've ranged for 50 yards, and that's about as far as I could do in a tree stand. It's much less that I'm comfortable with a muzzle loader, but it's just the reload capability.
Well, can you use a muzzle loader in general season?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just depending on whether or not I want the ability to reload or longer range. That's the give and take.
Because the one deer I've killed with a muzzleloader, it was out at a public land spot, one of the few public land spots in North Texas, where in gun season it's no centerfire rifle, it's shotgun or muzzleloader. But to me, it basically came down to that same decision. It was, do I want multiple rounds or do I want extended range? And out there, my problem's always been, I see deer at 100 yards, 120, but I don't see a lot of deer at 40, or a lot of deer at 60. And so that's when I'm like, yep, I'll take the range. And if I miss, I screwed it up, but I'd rather have the range. And then that was actually the day I rattled one into like, it was probably 75. It's the only deer I think I've ever shot standing up.
That's tough to do, man.
But it was
I
was
I
purely
could
like it was the hunt that happened to me. So I had rattled and waited, 20, 25 minutes. And then I got up to start packing up, packed up my stuff, put on my pack, started walking out slowly. And sure enough, he comes running down the trail and then looked right up at me and just boom. And so I think it was just, he had heard the rattle, but he had just taken his time to get there. But I don't know if that influences your decision at all, but it says, hey, you may be able to use some of those techniques rattling like you just did and do that with the muzzleloader or with the bow. Or with the bow, it's a little bit difficult because you got to go from something in both hands to something else in both hands really quick. But it can
definitely.
be done.
I think I'm gonna get a lot of action. I think I'm still in my like little deer highway area.
Yeah.
And I don't know about my other flipping tree stand because a squirrel chewed open my camera and it didn't turn it off. It like opened it up. I was like, oh, I don't want to eat batteries, and just left. So it opened it up. It swung the camera sideways, and all I was getting was pictures of like leaves.
So did it chew through the strap?
It chewed open like the little flap. Like I don't have a lock on the outside because I'm on private property. I never
Yeah.
thought to put one of those on there.
So like the little
And so
plastic
it just
latch.
like the latch, yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it.
So that like outer little flap, it was the main part that it chewed on, and it must have like busted it open where it was like, oh, I guess this isn't a feeder. Let me just get on my way. But it just swung it open. So I thought somebody had like stolen like my
Your card or something.
my card or whatever. Yeah.
Well, dang.
So
Well,
so I
so
don't
I
know
guess,
about that stance.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, you sounded pretty confident about it earlier, and obviously you've got him at one place, but I don't think you're burning out your stand either. It's not like you're hunting it 3 days in a row. You're giving it a lot of time to reset. So I think you're approaching it very cautiously and wisely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I looked down for a good amount of time there because I was getting a bunch of spy point photos sent to my phone, and there's like an older spike that's on the camera that's showing up.
Okay.
So it could have been him that showed up that day. I really
Yeah.
don't know. It
Yeah.
was definitely an older. I agree with you that it was probably an older buck, but if he shows up, he's definitely going down.
Well, do you regret um, anything? I mean, it sounds like you regret maybe not being a little bit more ready, but do you regret not taking a shot at those other bucks or that doe or anything like that?
So I don't regret not, because it was at 27 yards that I spotted him, and he was in a full, like, purposeful walk. And so I would have had to like fumble too quickly to grab a grunt to get him to stop, to draw back, like all of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
I don't regret, because that could have had a high chance of busting me. And I'm glad I didn't take that risk, because I'm glad I saw how it played out. It was a really cool experience. The thing that I regret the most is just not staying in it, and making sure that I was always stealthy,
Yeah.
because I'm in a tree stand open to the elements. I don't have any of like the wrap. I'm not in like a cocoon or whatever those, some of those stands are. I'm open to the elements, even though I'm 18 feet in the air.
Yeah. But I like it better just because it absolutely makes it harder, like for sure. But it makes it more, you're there. Like you're entirely there. You feel naked almost.
And quite literally, when you're on a hillside, it is insanely hard to get the deer from uphill to not see you. Like you just have to, like, it's much different when people are coming from downhill. And I probably should have oriented my tree stand downhill, so like the tree was blocking the uphill
Because
view.
you're
I'll
starting
probably do
at
that
their eye
next year.
level.
Exactly. And so that's where most of the deer are coming from, is left or right or uphill. So I kind of wanted to see that more, but it's all a learning experience,
Yeah.
and hopefully it ends up in a nice meal one day.
Yeah. So have you only hunted mornings there or have you hunted an evening there?
Only mornings, because I'm hesitant to track in the dark, because there's some houses that in the area that apparently don't like hunters as much. And so I figure if they see a flashlight directly behind their house but not on their property, they might be a little bit squirrely about it, if you know what I mean. And so yeah, I'm more likely to do a morning hunt.
Yeah.
And I just haven't seen much camera activity, quite honestly,
I think that's the
at night.
bigger thing. I mean, if they don't like hunting, that's on them. You're not on their property. You're not bugging them. I mean, I think it's reasonable to be concerned about it, but ultimately, hunt when it's good and don't hunt when it's not good.
Sure. Sure. Trying to hunt cold fronts right now, because right now the high today was like 83, and when I was in the woods it was 38 degrees.
Dude, I mean, you moved away from Texas, but you remember what West Texas can be like. My morning sit on Saturday, it was 39. My evening sit on Sunday, it was 94.
Holy
I
crap.
kid you not.
That aligns. That would have been me. Like it wouldn't have been that hot, but we had a drastic change from that Saturday to Sunday.
Yeah.
And
And I had
one
every
thing that
wind
is-
direction. It was south, southeast, southwest, west, northeast, south. Like it was a mess.
when I've hunted, it's never been really strong winds. It's always been pretty calm, and like 1, 2, 3 degrees, something like that. Or 1, 2, 3 mile an hour, whatever.
Oh, so just
There
barely.
was a li-
Yeah.
Just barely. There was a little bit stronger wind, maybe 5 or 10, this past weekend for a short bit of time.
Which is
But there's been
perfect,
a
I
couple
think.
four.
Like
Yeah, and it was, because it was actually
enough that you can
Where was
read
that?
it and predict it and call it, and it's not like you struggle feeling it, but you don't want it blowing you out either.
Exactly. There's a couple forums here that have talked about how they don't play the wind when they hunt in Tennessee. And they've made comments like, "Oh yeah, when people come here and they're like, 'Oh, we got to play the wind,' I laugh." And I wanted to text or like message that person, excuse me, directly, just to kind of see what they were talking about, because I really don't know. In my experience in the woods, there's a lot of swirling,
Yeah.
especially like in the hills and stuff. And so I think maybe his point, and I don't know for this for sure, but maybe his point is like, if you try to play the wind, you'll go crazy. So just get your butt in the woods and do the best you can. And if you get, if you blow through a stand, then try somewhere else. Because it can be really tough when you're on some of those hillsides and
Yeah.
all of that.
Well, I mean,
And-
that's also
and
the
in the
game of
woods.
playing the wind, is you're never going to get it totally right. And I'm a huge advocate of playing the wind, and guess what? I played the wind on every sit, and I sat downwind, and I had a deer come from even more downwind. So like, it still can go wrong. So it's absolutely not a like, yep, that's how you do it. But I don't think it means give up on it either.
Sure. Yeah, the tough part about with me, it's a pro and a con. I can only come from one spot of the property. And I mean, I guess you could say I could take different routes to get there,
Yeah.
but it's a pretty small funnel to get there just because of the landscape. But the one thing I do have going for me is it's not a residential area by any means, but human scent is not unusual.
Yeah.
And so that definitely is a pro, especially when I can space out my hunts. And so it's not like my stuff is all over there all the time and they just, they get pushed to a different part of the hillside or something like that. So we'll see.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you had a good experience. I don't know when you're going out next. Sounds like a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the 5th, maybe. I can't remember if that's the right day.
That sounds like
No,
a
it might
good.
be the 7th.
Dude, there are like a bunch of podcasts and stuff who talk about November 7th is the best day to kill a deer. Like that's, I think maybe it's Midwest Whitetails. There's somebody who like swears that November 7th is the deer killingest day of the year. And I don't think he's wrong. I think around then, I mean, I haven't tested like that specific date, but that weekend is probably when I've killed more deer than any other weekend. So that's a good thing.
Oh, I almost had my anniversary is the week after that. And I remember November 10th which is my anniversary, was on a Saturday one time or on a weekend day one time. And I was hunting it. My wife was working but she didn't have to work the whole day. I did my morning sit and didn't get anything. And I was walking the outer rim of the property. It was like a huge field. You've actually been on that field.
Okay.
In West Tennessee.
Yep.
And I was walking the outer rim of that field, and I was on the phone with her saying, "Hey, happy anniversary! I didn't get a deer, or whatever." And this monster goes across the field, and I didn't see him until he was maybe 15 yards from the tree line, and he was about 180 away, and I had a muzzle loader, and I was
So edgy range, but doable.
especially if I was sitting down in my blind, right?
Yeah.
I was walking at this point on the phone with her, and I just said, "Hey, hold on just a second." And I got on my knees and I pulled up, and he looked at me for a half second. And with a muzzle loader, I wanted to make sure I knew the range, because I looked at him and I was like, he's over 125. If he's less than 125, I'm pulling the trigger.
Yeah, just put it
but
right
at
on
that
him.
range, like once you get above 125, for me, I get iffy with range. Like 150 kind of looks like 250 to me at least at this point in my
Well,
life.
especially
And
on a
so-
really flat piece of ground. It's just hard
exactly.
to
And
tell
so
sometimes.
I took, yeah. And by the time I took out my rangefinder to get a range on him, all I saw was butt.
Yeah.
And he was heading into the woods. And I've only seen him one time on camera,
Ah.
and I was just drooling over him. So yeah, I have one one story from that weekend, and hopefully it's a different one this year.
Yeah,
But
well, and it seems like that, about that November 3rd through November 10th, 12th, early end of the, I guess, late pre-rut or right when they're really rutting hard. I mean, some people would say that's the peak of the rut. Depends where you live. I don't think there's a universal there. But that's where that deer that you saw on camera one time during the summer, or those deer that you don't have a pattern on, like that's when things can happen. When they're just out running all over the place and so you have a chance. And so that's kind of my strategy too. That one buck, the only buck I've ever nicknamed, because I always listen to these podcasts and watch these hunting shows, and I'm like, they're just naming all these bucks. And I think usually it's not out of drama or being ridiculous. It's because they have 10 8-points and they're trying to tell you which one it is. And I've just never been in that position. So usually I'm like, yeah, that one 8-point, or it's the big 8 versus the small 8. Like, it's usually that. But this one buck I nicknamed Boots, because he walked through mud, so he had muddy feet and it looked like he was wearing boots. But that's my strategy for him, because not seeing him at all, but I think in mid-November, he may just be running around.
And that's the hard part, right? Is timing that rut when you're in that West Texas, Southwest Texas, because like if it starts getting cold, I mean, granted, there's so many like different theories about what causes the rut, but like when you start getting into that time frame, I feel like there is a real sweet spot, and I feel like the post-rut lull is awful.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, when you're like, you just feel, I just missed it. It's like showing up to an empty box of donuts.
you're like, oh,
You're like, this could have
see,
been
like, the
awesome.
crusted sugar, the icing on the bottom. You're like, kidding.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, man. So that's my story. I hope that I get one. We'll see if it happens. I just want to get a deer. It doesn't matter to me really which way it happens, but it would be very, very gratifying to get it with a bow.
Yeah, man. Well, I wish you luck next time you hit the woods, and thank you for sharing your story. It was a fun one. To everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are cheering for Nate as he gets back in the woods with either his bow or his muzzleloader. Until next time, stay safe, be free, and never stop seeking adventure.